Hey, hey, hey! Guess who it is? It's another episode of the Musician's Personal Development Podcast, and I am CC Bass.
Did you say guess who it is?
Right, okay. And who are you?
I am Wil Cameron, and we are.
Right. One, two seasoned musicians who are here to bring you the best actionable tips to get you to your best musician self through personal development. But before we get into it, I want to just say, if you like what you've been seeing this far, make sure you subscribe to this podcast on YouTube and like us on Facebook at MPD Podcast. So today we are going to talk about rejection and how to handle it. How to handle it like a pro.
Yep, that is the title. Handle rejection like a pro. So I love that.
Yep.
I love that title.
Yep. Very important that we're talking about this because, rejection is inevitable, especially in music. We've talked about this before. You've heard me say this before, Wil. Music is subjective. There's no such thing as the best musician in the world. You might have your favorites, but, it's a matter of opinion, right?
Yes.
So everybody deals with rejection. I deal with rejection all day, every day with this and that and the other, not just in music, that's it's just human nature.
Right.
So, and this, for whatever reason, we get rejected, but, because it's inevitable, that's something we're going to have to deal with, but how we manage that, how do we work through that, how do we handle that, how do we learn from that and grow, that is really what the thing is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is interesting, and it's like you think about it, it's all of life, people who end up being successful, they find ways to be better or more effective at managing their rejection. And the improper handling of rejection, I guess, is more what we want to figure out what it is, identify what it is, so that we're not handling rejection improperly. We're going to handle rejection like a pro. I was reading some stuff, and it was talking about how that whole fear of rejection thing is a type of it's tied to a social anxiety disorder. And because of that, it drives you to engage in certain types of behavior. Possibly you could engage in things, being passive aggressive, or being depressed, or agitated, or doing things to go out of your way to try to please people when you really shouldn't do that. Not handling rejection the right way, it undermines your authenticity. You start to be somebody who you're not. You find yourself being a whole plastic person, and that's not how you become your best musician self. You are who you are, and you can be you better than anyone else. So not handling that rejection the right way is just an alley that we don't want to walk down. So
and I was going to say that to add to what you're saying, there are some people that handle rejection by not taking any action. And that's not necessarily a good thing too. As a matter of fact, if you find yourself not getting rejected, that means you're living too much in your comfort zone. You're not taking enough chances, because the way we grow is by actually taking chances and stepping outside of our comfort zone. Even if it's just little steps. So going out there and getting rejected is such a great thing, because getting the yeses will get you gigs.
Yes.
Getting the no's will build you, your interpersonal skills, because it'll toughen you up and how to handle that, and you can grow from that.
That is a very significant point about never hearing no. I mean, life is full of taking risks, and that's really what it comes down to, taking risks. We take risks all the time. When you are driving on that 2-lane road and you look down and you glance at that text message, or maybe you go to that sketchy food truck over in the corner, you're taking a risk. When you're running a yellow light, you don't go through a yellow light thinking, oh geez, I really hope I make it through this yellow light. You kind of go a little bit faster and think, oh, let me squeeze through here. So we're always looking for ways to go forward. We should be challenging ourselves. But why is this whole handling rejection like a pro, why is all of that so important? Who cares? Why is all of this worth having a podcast over?
Well, because if you're like me, I had struggled with the social anxiety, and not that, you don't have to struggle with social anxiety to have the fear of rejection, but fear of rejection is such a huge thing, and it can be crippling, and keep us stuck in our comfort zone in one place.
Yeah.
So, I figured I would use some tips to share with how I get through it and how Wil gets through it. And because since it is inevitable, yeah.
So you want to go into like the actionable tips about how to handle rejection like a pro?
Yeah, absolutely. Let's turn the corner and let's talk about how we what we do, the tools that we use, and how you can actually apply it. So what's tip number one?
So to handle rejection like a pro, the number one is pretty simple. So you have to know that you are not for everyone, and everyone is not for you. So we're not talking about like dating types of thing. I know some dudes that have tried to date everyone and fail miserably, but just know that again, we're being authentic. We're being who we are as individuals. Know that you are not for everyone. You're not for every gig. You're not for every group. So.
Right, exactly. So, and so that is a big one for me, because I don't get tied to what's going to happen. I just focus on what I do, and some people may like me and some people won't. If you do, great. If you don't, great. It's maybe the situation is not meant to be, and it's just a lot easier when we could put that into perspective. It may sound obvious, well, I already know that, but we as humans we forget, and we tend to take things personal. So this is a way to kind of look at it. Look, you're not for everybody, and I'm not for everybody, and everybody's not for me, and that's just how it is. Just like with relationships, like you said, Wil, that's how it happens. It's the same in music.
Yes,
no different.
and sometimes it's not you. Sometimes, it may come across as rejection, but sometimes it is clearly not you. Sometimes you are way more, much more than what is required for a certain type of musical environment or musical situation. So sometimes what we think we want, what we think is best for us, is not best for us. And so just like in other types of relationships, whether it's at work or whether it's like a social type of thing or whether you're cycling, sometimes it is just not you. So just know that you are not for everyone, and everyone is not for you. So our second.
Yeah, and I should, before we, I was just going to give one quick example of that. I was in a band not too long ago, in which there was a drummer who was extraordinarily good, and we don't play together now because for some reason we just couldn't click. We couldn't quite gel together, and it didn't matter what we played. I just couldn't seem to lock in with him. And I'm like, what is going on? Either am I just not good, or he's really good? So, at the end of the day, just the chemistry just wasn't there, and I just pass it off as that, And then the next drummer comes along, and it's like, we locked right in. So anyway, so what do we have for tip number two?
Tip number two, to handle rejection like a pro, a good strategy would be to focus on what we can control. What we or you can control.
Right. There's a saying that well, I don't know what the saying is, but only focus on what you can control. You can't control everything else, and you can't control people and situations. And anytime we try, it never goes as we desire. It never goes right. That we always fail in that. So, what I say is focus on the process, not the outcome. Because when you stay more focused on the process, the outcome, wherever you're trying to go, is going to work out some way or another. That journey to get there just may not be as you planned. So if you didn't get that gig or get that performance or that win that competition that you were looking for, it's okay. Stay focused on getting better, because success looks like this. As long as you're focusing on the process, it's not defined by, look, I got rejected, and so my success goes like that, and you get focused on that. That is not the way to do it. So I just stay focused on the process. I work on getting better, and wherever I end up is where I'm supposed to end up.
But that's how we learn, CC. So that really speaks to personal growth. So those scars and the scratches and the wounds that you get, and those feelings of anxiety,
Exactly.
all of those things, I won't say they build character, but they help you to find ways to navigate your way through whatever it is. We're not just talking about music here. We are just talking about music here. But the stuff we're talking about, you could overlay that on a number of different things. Most of us spend the majority of our time either at school or at work. So these same types of strategies where we focus on process and not outcome, that's a phenomenal strategy. But then you take an inventory, or you assess the lessons that you learn, the interactions that you have with people, the ways that you find ways forward in these different situations that you find yourself in, because it didn't turn out the way that you think it should have turned out at that time. I probably don't spend a whole lot of time looking in the rearview mirror, figuratively or literally, thinking about what would have happened if I had done something different. I don't find that to be a very successful strategy. If I don't land in a spot where I want to be, I really don't spend a whole lot of time thinking about, oh, I should have said this, or next time I'll say that, or it's just, I look at those experiences, I take ownership of them, and I just try to move on and focus as much as I can on the process and the outcome, which is actually tied to our third actionable tip to handle rejection like a pro. And that deals a lot with, I do a lot of self-reflection. And I will admit that I am probably not the most sensitive person in the world all of the time. And I don't always have the greatest sense of humor all the time. I think I kind of have a weird sense of humor is more so what it is. But I do a lot of self-reflecting when I have issues with rejection, or when I'm trying to handle rejection like a pro. When we were doing this, CC, actually, I'm going to rat her out. She was talking about this experience of, I don't know if it's true or not, where you're in a diner and you've got coffee there, you're having breakfast, and the person comes along and they say, well, hey, would you like more coffee? And you say, oh, no, I don't want more coffee. The person that's serving you doesn't have meltdowns. Say, oh my goodness, do you think the coffee's horrible? Did I do something? They don't do that. They just say, okay, and they walk away, right? If we could shake everything off in life like that, if we could quickly justify, wasn't me, or that's why she had that reaction, and then just move on, we would be so much better. I had a situation at my day job where I was in an acting position for about 8 months doing a job, and I thought, oh, well, I'm going to apply for this job. It's like a little bit of an upgrade to me. So I applied for the job, and I didn't get it. Well, I didn't know what to handle. I didn't know how to handle it because I've never not gotten a job I had ever applied for. And they gave it to a person who was probably as qualified as me, but he didn't last as long in the job in an acting capacity. I did my self-reflection, and what I came up with was that it's political. So it wasn't me. So I immediately moved on. It's like, well, I didn't do anything wrong. It just wasn't me. So there are times that I've handled it that way professionally. In a more of a musical context, I'm a little embarrassed to tell you this. I'll keep everything anonymous, though. My ego kind of got in the way. We all have an ego. It was a church gig, and I wanted this church gig because it was a really cool church. And I thought, oh man, this will be great. The equipment was there, really high-end stuff, and I thought, man, this would be a great environment and all that stuff. I'm going to get this. So I get called for a couple of the first audition, which I know I'm going to make it. I get this called for the second round. So I'm with the second round of drummers, and my motive was wrong. I didn't want the gig for the right reason. And so that was kind of a problem. I didn't really think about that when I was trying to get the gig. The second issue was that I had all these scheduling things. So I pretty much made everybody, the people who were doing the auditions, the other drummers that had to come and audition, everything revolved around me because they liked me. So they had to work around my schedule. I had other gigs and stuff, so I couldn't make it, so everything fit around me. Well, I wasn't organized the way that I should have been, and I got my times mixed up. So I created confusion. I showed up at the rehearsal, but it wasn't the right time, and I had questions about stuff. So needless to say, they thought, well, this guy talks a whole bunch of stuff. He plays okay, but this isn't for him. I did my self-reflection, and I came up with, I was chasing that gig for the wrong reason, and I wasn't doing things the way I should have done it. It was totally my fault that I didn't get that gig. It had nothing to do with rejection. I wasn't prepared. I handled it the wrong way. My initial motives were wrong. That was totally on me. And that's what my self-reflection came back with. I was able to move on.
I love that. Yeah, I love that you bring up. Essentially what you're saying is taking ownership and being accountable for your actions, and that's something that definitely a lot of us could do more of. Is when we're self-reflecting, look at what could have gone differently, what could have done differently. But again, only focus on the parts that you can control. So you don't want to spend too much time there. Let me caveat that, because some people will spend a lot of time there and beat themselves up, and we don't want to do that. You want to go in just enough so you can be able to figure out, okay, what did I do that I could do differently, and focus on that, and then move on. Just work on it and get better. Yeah.
This is great. I like this particular show because the tips are very basic and they seem like really easy, but when you start to apply them, it really requires some thought. So let me run through them really quick one more time. And these are 3 tips I got to look at the title again so I don't get it wrong. Handling rejection like a pro. That just sounds so cool. Number 1 is know that you are not for everyone, and everyone is not for you. And we've been told that ever since we were little. Number 2, one of the things that I would recommend is to have a good strategy to focus only on what we can control. And number 3 entails self-reflection and, did you say accountability? What did you say? Personal accountability?
Yeah, taking self-reflection on taking ownership of your part. And that goes back to the number 2 is only focusing on what you can control.
So that's great.
Yeah.
So I really like that this show. Hopefully these tips are things that since we all have to deal with rejection in some way, and you can't avoid it. Well, I guess you could avoid it by not making any decisions or pushing yourself. But it's all in how you recover. And we were chatting about this before we we came online here. And when you think about, if you're a jazz musician, or you've listened to a jazz musician, even the great ones, when they make a mistake, they don't stop and say, oh my goodness, I can't believe I made that mistake. They just play right through. They just play right through it. It's how they react to making a mistake that could be perceived as a rejection based on what somebody says about it. They don't seem to even worry about that. They just blow right through that yellow light and they keep going. And that's the mindset that we need to have. And we talked about mindset too. But that's the mindset that we need to maintain. when we're talking about handling things like a pro, not making a big deal out of something that's not a big deal. I will be the first person in the world to run with my hair, the little bit of hair I have, run with my hair on fire if I'm scared or if I have to run. But there are very few things that I've found in life that are that devastating that if you wait a minute, you think like, well, wait a minute, come on. This isn't going to be that bad. You think about what's happening. Think about your emotions. Think about what you're feeling. Think about those things that you can control and apply these actionable tips where appropriate.
Yeah, and I also want to caveat by saying, we're providing these tips. These are actually tips that we use, and that's how we came up with them. But also note that you have to apply them every day. I apply this all day, every day, and definitely with every show and every gig. Just because by human nature, we forget. We forget the messages. What you're hearing today may have been something you heard before, but you got to keep repeating it and get it in your psyche and actually applying it. And that's how they work, and that's how you get to manage any of those performance jitters and so forth. So anyway, it's been a great show today. That's all the time we have for today, and I hope you enjoyed what you heard and you got something out of it. Again, if you like us, if you got questions, if you have an idea for a show, or you want to share your story, you can send us an email at mpdpodcast@gmail.com. And are you pointing down? Oh yeah, we're pointing down. And then you can subscribe to our YouTube channel. Please do. We're trying to reach as many musicians as possible, and also like us on.
We
Facebook
are getting.
at
I'd
MPD
like to
Podcast.
thank a couple of our buddies who actually are reaching out to us and giving us ideas for some of these. We've got CC has been a very busy person, and she has a whole stack of these ideas for the podcasts. But we're starting to get some suggestions from some of our musician friends and some of our colleagues who've actually given us like tremendous ideas. And we'd like to thank you for sending those and encourage you. Those of us who we've played with, who know us personally, thank you so much for sending those. And we may not have talked about your topic yet, but there's a strategy to how we're doing this. So trust me, if you've given it to us, we've taken it down, we've recorded it, and we will do a show on it eventually. So thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, that is it, and
we
are
Cue the
out of
music.
here.
Music.
Have a good one. See you.